And now, Hebrews chapter 4. Or excuse me, Hebrews chapter 3. If you'll turn to Hebrews chapter 3. Now, this evening, or this afternoon, David Todd is going to be talking about what God has done for him. And then next Sunday, we're going to have a devotional. So men, be prepared to get songs and scriptures ready. And that's what we'll do in the afternoon on November 28th. Now, if you have the outline, it's probably an unusual thing to see God the Father can't. And so we're going to look at something in a little bit different twist, not to be provocative, but to see what God can and can't do, because my God, based on the fact that he is all just and he is all merciful, he limits himself. And so we're going to see how he limits himself and what our response is that. This should be a very encouraging lesson on the things that God can't do, and we ought to be thankful for the things that he has limited himself on. And so just by his nature. And so we're going to look at these things as we do. Hopefully you have a chance to put some thought in this later on, to where we're going to try to do this same thing with God the Spirit and God the Son. And so the things that they can't do, because there are things that are amazing that they can do. And the first thing is, number one, God the Father can't let disobedient enter rest. We've been talking about this in the morning. And in chapter 3, verse 18, it says, "And to whom did he swear that they would never enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient?" Verse 19, "So we see that they were unable to enter because of unbelief." So you can't enter rest. God will not allow you. He can't let the disobedient and those that do not believe enter rest. And that's a good thing, because that means in the rest, in the eternal rest, it's going to be all people of like-minded that believe our God to be the one true God. And so knowing this fact, there should be a response. And the response for each one of these should be chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "Therefore we must pay much closer attention to what we've heard, lest we drift away." That's going to be one of the things that we need to respond with. We need to pay more attention with what God has said. The other is found in chapter 4, verse 11. It says, "Let us strive. Let us therefore strive to enter the rest, so that no one may fail or fall by the same sort of disobedience." So knowing that the disobedient can't be there, God cannot allow the disobedient to be there, our response is that we should strive to be obedient. That should give us more encouragement to do what we should be doing. And now the second one, if you go to chapter 6. Chapter 6, Hebrews chapter 6, we're going to look in 13 and 14. "For when God made a promise to Abraham, since he had no one greater by whom he swore by himself, saying, 'Surely I will bless you and multiply you.'" So number 2 is, God the Father can't swear by anyone but himself, because there's no one greater than him. And that should be a blessing. That should be encouraging to us, to know that there's nothing greater than him. You know, I know that there's a better team out there. There's always a better speaker out there. There's always a better someone. You know, you may be the best in your little area, but it's just your little area. There's someone that's better. But in this, whom we believe in, there's no one greater. So when he came to swear, he just had to swear by himself. Because when you're looking around, there's no one greater than our God. That is amazing. So our response should be chapter 2, verse 1. We should pay closer attention, more closer attention, so we don't drift away. But also, in chapter 6, verse 19, should be our response. "We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the place behind the curtain." We know in verse 13, he swore by no one greater than himself. That should allow us, our faith, to be secure. Our anchor should be set on our faith with him. It should be set on him, because there's no one greater. He's allowed us to go behind the curtain, because back then only the high priest could go. And now it's been removed. When Christ died, the curtain was torn in two from the top all the way to the bottom, allowing us now to be priests, to go in, because we have a high priest that acts on our behalf. We are a holy people, a holy nation, a people that are set apart. So that should be very encouraging for us. Now, number 3, go to Hebrews 6, verse 17. It says, so when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he guaranteed it with an oath. Now, number 3 is God can't change his purpose. That should give you hope right there. That should give you confidence. If I just follow what his will is, he's not going to change it. His purpose doesn't change because his character is not going to change. It talks about the fact that he doesn't take back an oath and he can't lie. And so his purpose is always true. And so for us, our response should be chapter 2, verse 1. Pay careful attention. And it also should be from verse 18. It says, so that by 2 unchangeable things, which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. So our response is that we should hold fast. We should hold fast because there's a hope that will not disappoint. And that's a wonderful thing to think of in this world that's constantly changing. It's a pendulum that goes from one end to back to the other over and over again. And we can't, it's like trying to hit a moving target. The way people are and the things that change. Our society is always changing. But our God doesn't. His purpose doesn't. That should be encouraging to you. And number 4, look in verse 18. As we've read here, it says, so that by 2 unchangeable things, which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. And number 4 is, God the Father can't lie. And there's a whole bunch of people in this world that'll change and stretch the truth, and they'll say certain things of convenience. But our God doesn't lie. When he gives you a promise, he carries it out every time. And that's amazing. So our response is pay careful attention. From chapter 2, verse 1, and in this verse, verse 18, it should also be the fact that we hold fast. We should hold fast to that hope because it's not going to be a hope that dissipates. It's a hope that's going to be revealed at the end of time. And number 5, go to chapter 7, verse 21. It says, but this one was made a priest by an oath, by the one who said to him, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. Now, from verse 21, the number 5 would be, God the Father can't change his mind. And that's another good thing. He doesn't change his mind. He doesn't say, yeah, I'm going to go that route, and then just say, I feel differently today. I woke up and I just feel different. Kind of like me. I plan to work out. I planned to work out yesterday. And my day, as it transpired, it was about 11:30 p.m. and I still hadn't worked out. And so at that point I said, it would probably be better for me to get some sleep. That would probably be the better thing for my health. And then I was restless. I couldn't go to sleep. I should have worked out, but I didn't. I kept changing my mind, making it more convenient. So you know what today is? Today I need to work out after afternoon service. So you can test me and see if that actually happens. Or if something comes up and I change my mind. But the good thing about it is our God doesn't change his mind. When he says it, it's a done deal. And we can take hope and encouragement in that. And so for us, verse 22, it says in chapter 7, verse 22, this makes Jesus the guarantor of a better covenant. And so because of him, we know we have a better covenant. This is the one where he died for. This is the one that was put into effect by his death. This is the one that removes sins. This is the one that allows him not to remember any more of our past. This is a great thing. He can't change his mind. So our response is that we need to follow this better covenant. We need to know it's better and follow it. Number 6, God the Father. We're going to look at the verses first. Chapter 8, verse 12. Chapter 8, verse 12. It says, for I will be merciful towards their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. And if you go over chapter 10, verse 17, He says, then he adds, I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. So number 6 is God the Father can't remember forgiven sins. He can't do it. He can't remember given sins. And isn't that wonderful to know that he forgets it? He doesn't just forgive it, but he's removed it. And so it makes me wonder all the things that you keep asking God to forgive because you hadn't forgiven yourself. And you sit there and you pray over and over for the same thing. Father, please forgive me when I did this. Please forgive my attitude when I thought this way. Please forgive my actions. And you keep on doing it. He's forgiven because it says he knows your heart, doesn't he? In 1 John chapter 3, 19 and 20 says he knows your heart. He's greater than your heart and how you feel about it. And so when he forgives, he forgets. And so in my mind, he's got to be wondering, what is she or he talking about? Because that's done. I forgave it, and I wish they could forgive themselves. Because until you can forgive yourself, you keep stirring around in that same rut, don't you? And you just can't ever get past it. And we've got a God that says, I can't remember forgiven sins. That's amazing. So our response, once again, we need to pay close attention as it talks about in chapter 2, verse 1, but also look in chapter 10. And I'm going to read this, 19 through 26. It says, therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that has been opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confidence of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting the meeting together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, all the more as you see the day drawing near. For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. And so our response is, we need to be done with sin. We need to be done. If he doesn't remember it, we need to quit living in it. He says multiple things. He says, let us draw near. He says in verse 23, let us hold fast. He says in verse 24, let us consider how we can stir each other up, how we can spur each other, how we can get each other going. And so our response, if he doesn't remember the past of what we've done that we've been forgiven of, we don't need to be living back in it. We don't need to be wallowing in it like a pig goes back to the mud hole. And number 8, look in chapter 10 while you're here, verse 37 and 38. It says, for yet a little while, the coming will come and will not delay, but my righteous shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. And so number 7 is God the Father can't be pleased by shrinking back. He just can't be pleased by it. There's nothing in him that says that that's okay. He's given us everything that we need. He's given us a spirit, a power, love, and self-discipline to keep on moving. He has said, I'm going to protect you. He has given us all these things, these promises of Romans chapter 28, or chapter 8, verse 28, in multitudes, where it says, God's going to work out all things for our good. And in verse 31, he says, if God's for us, who can be against us? And he just lists it on and on about all the things, the way he's taken care of you. He says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, that if you seek the kingdom, he's going to give you all that you need. So he's done this. Why should we be shrinking back? There's no point to be shrinking back. And so our response, not only chapter 2, verse 1, pay close attention so we don't drift away, but it's found in verse 39. But we are not those who shrink back and are destroyed, but those who have faith and preserve their souls. So for us, we don't shrink back. That's response. We don't shrink back. We keep stepping forward and we be faithful. That's what we need to do. We've talked about in Sunday morning about how to be faithful. Well, how you can develop your faith is by getting in his word. And following it is being faithful. And so if we want to make sure we're pleasing to him, we don't shrink back. And for some of us, We think that we have to go a whole great distance. He said just don't shrink back. That means keep moving forward. And your move forward may be bigger than someone else's, but you just keep stepping forward. You keep growing in your faith. And some days and some months and some years, it may be just a few steps you're moving forward. But just don't go back. Keep moving forward. And there may be some days and some months and some years where you just have leaps and bounds that you're progressing in your faith. And during those tough times, you just keep on moving forward though. You may not get as far, but you just keep moving. Don't shrink back. There's no pleasure. He doesn't have pleasure in that. Can't please him. And in chapter 8, or in chapter 11, verse 6, it says, and without faith, it's impossible to please him. For whenever we draw near to God, we must believe that he exists and he rewards those who seek him. Some versions say who diligently seek him. It's the same thing. When you're seeking or you're diligently seeking, man, you're getting after it. Number 8 would be God the Father can't be pleased without faith. He cannot be pleased without it. So if we're going to please him, our faith should be growing. As we talked about in class, we can't just sit there and just eat that, go after what someone else has sit there and taught. We need to be teaching. We need to be learning on our own. And so for us, if faith pleases him, why wouldn't we want to grow in our faith? The one who has given us everything, the one who sustains everything, the one that has blessed us with all the people here in this building to where we are able to worship and fellowship with each other. He has blessed you with the family that you have. He has blessed you with the kids that you have. He has blessed you with the health you have. Some is greater than others, but he has given you all these things that, man, why wouldn't you want to grow in your faith? And so for us, the response is chapter 2, verse 1 is pay close attention, and as well as verse 39 and 40. In verse 39, that we do not shrink back, that we're going to be faithful. And so for us, that's what we should be doing. You look in chapter 11, verse 39 and 40. And it says, and all these, though commanded through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. And so for us, this whole chapter right here says once, twice, multiple times, God can be pleased with faith, and he gives you all these examples of faith. And so for us, our response is we need to be faithful. That's the response from chapter 11. And then number 9, if you go to chapter 12, verse 6. And this is a tough one here, I think. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastises every son whom he receives. So number 9, God the Father can't love without discipline. Just can't do it. He's not going to let you do your thing. He's going to sit there and mold you because you're supposed to be conformed in the image of his Son. In Romans chapter 8, verse 29. So you think about how things have been difficult, things have been tough. He's molding you. When all of a sudden you think, man, why aren't these things working out? And why are all these things happening? You're being disciplined. And he disciplines you because he loves you. You can see a coach, and you know when a coach is giving up on you. Because when he doesn't correct you anymore, go ahead and run the play how you want to run it. You're going to be sitting on the bench anyway. You're just taking up space. And so you know when a coach can't stand you on the team anymore. He quits working with you. Just go over there. I remember specifically, there was a kid that said he came late to practice or did something, and so he got in trouble, and he was going to have another guy start for him. And he said, all right, you're going to sit the bench. You're not going to start. This guy's going to start. Well, this guy kept messing up, and the coach was just tired and fed up with it. And so when it came to, now the coach promised, came up to time for this other fella to start over the normal starter, he looked at that guy and just like, oh man, what am I doing to the team? Get out of here. And just made the guy that was supposed to start sit on the bench. He didn't keep his word, not a man of his word. I get that. But what that said right there to everyone is that coach gave up on that kid. because he didn't want to correct him. He didn't want to deal with him anymore. Just sit on the bench. I don't even want to look at you. You were late, but let's go ahead and get you in there anyway. Well, our God doesn't give up on us. He doesn't give up on us because he loves us. And so he has shown that by his son. So he's not going to stop disciplining you. So you think life's going to be easy? It's not going to be easy. It's going to continue to be difficult as long as we keep kicking against God. You know, it says, don't kick against the goads. As in chapter 9, where Paul is, God saying, why are you kicking against the goads? And it's kind of like a cattle prod, putting them back. Hey, get right. You're at it. Get back. That's for us. We keep getting off track, and he keeps prodding us back because he can't love without discipline. And that's something to be said for our kids too. You don't just let them do whatever you want to or whatever they want to. You discipline them. You keep instructing them because you want them to have friends when they get older. You want them to be productive, be independent. Same is true with our God. He wants us to grow up to maturity. And looking in number 10. Number 10, you can find that in Hebrews chapter 13. But before we do, let me look at the response. I didn't go over the response of number 9. So response is found in chapter 12. Although chapter 2, verse 1 is pay close attention. Chapter 12, 11 through 16, it says, for the moment all discipline seems painful, rather than pleasant. But after it yields a peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who've been trained by it. Therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather healed. Strive for peace with everyone, for the holiness without which one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls or to obtain the grace of God, and that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, that it may become defiled. And in verse 16, that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. So these verses tell us, when it says God can't love without discipline, our response is we need to step up and do right. We need to live righteous. We need to follow what he's asked us to do. And number 10, found in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Number 10, for me, it has to be the best. God the Father can't forsake you. He can't leave you. He can't desert you. That's amazing to me. Because I know me. And you know yourselves. Like no one else does. And God says he's not going to forsake you. He's not going to leave you alone and leave you without. And so our response, chapter 2, verse 1, pay close attention so you don't drift away. But also, look in verse 6. This is our response. So we can confidently say, because he says he'll never leave us or forsake us, the Lord is my helper. The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do with me? So our response is confidence. What's man going to do with us? What can he do with us? There's nothing he can't do that our God hasn't permitted. And he can't destroy our body and soul. Man can't. But God can. And so we ought to have confidence knowing that he will not forsake us. He will not leave us. And so as you look at these 10 things, I hope you sit there and you think about, there's a lot of things our God cannot do. And isn't it amazing that he can't do those things? Because that gives us hope. Because he is not going to let the disobedient in rest. He can't swear by anyone because there's no one else greater than him. He can't change his purpose. He can't lie. He can't change his mind. He can't remember forgiven sins. He can't be pleased by shrinking back. He can't be pleased without faith. He can't love without discipline, and he cannot forsake you. What a great and awesome God we serve. That we have a chance to worship with him today. That we have a chance to go before his throne and he hears us. That is truly amazing, because what is man that he is mindful of us? Well, he loves us. He loves us so much, he gave us his son. And so for you, where are you on these 10 things? What are you struggling with? Let us know so we can be praying. Because as it's mentioned in class, and I mentioned it up here, is I want to go home, and I want to go home with everybody here. I want to enter that rest with every single one. And there's other people that aren't here right now that I want to enter the rest with, that I want them to go home with me as well. And I'm sure there's people here that are not here for you, that you want to go to heaven with as well. So we've got some work to do. And in the meantime, know that our God is always here. He's never forgotten you. He's never left you. He'll never forsake you. Amazing. Whatever we can do for you, though, please come while we stand and